Welcome to Hello Relo, the podcast that builds real estate expertise with Relo's VP Real Estate Mortgages, Sue Stiles.
Hello, everybody. It's Sue Stiles here. I'm the VP of your Relo and host of Hello Relo podcast. Today, I have a wonderful guest, Roger Will from Red Deer, Alberta, and Roger's with Maxwell Real Estate Solutions in Red Deer. Roger's been a realtor for over 25 years, and I'll let him tell you more about himself. And right, just to kick things off, listen, can you remember back to the day, the time that you first got your license? And if you can put yourself back in that place, Roger, would you start us off by telling us a bit about who you are and how you started? And what did that feel like? What was it like when you started in the real estate business?
Thank you, Sue. I'm Roger Will from Red Deer. I sell real estate here. Obviously, it's almost coming on 40 years now, actually. Unbelievable. Time flies when you're having fun, right?
Wow.
When I started in the business that long ago, things were remarkably different than they are now. My boss told me day one, I need to come in the office at least once a day because people really like to return somewhere between a day and 2 days and not longer. Of course, that's diminished down to 15 minutes. But what you get nowadays, people kind of expect you to get back to them. So it's changed a lot. We had a real estate book rather than a computer. So we had to put in the sheets of the sold, or take out the solds, put in the new ones, mark the pendings. The upside to that was it did keep you very averse to what was on the market because you were constantly going through that book 3 times a week, putting pages in, taking pages out. There wasn't much in the way of computers at all back then. One time I asked my boss, I said, he says, you're finding everything okay? I said, well, yeah, but I'm not really sure where you find all your clients. He says, I've probably been in the business a week. He says, you need a list of clients. I said, well, that would be great. Yeah. So he went into his office and he was in there about a couple of minutes, came out and threw a phone book in front of me. He says, I tell you what, he says, all the people in there, they're your clients. Go ahead, give them a call. Which kind of caught me. I was surprised. I was 22 or 23 years old. And I thought, wow, that's how I'm going to do this. But it worked out pretty well. I used the phone book a bit, found some other ways of generating business, and led me to where I am today.
Wow. I mean, of course you hear that, but let's just take that a step farther. Did you actually start calling people in the phone book, or how did you start meeting people who might become clients?
Oh, actually, I did. I started phoning some people in the phone book and tried that for, on and off, probably for the first year. I did quite a lot of calling. I also did what they call door knocking. Went out and knocked on doors and asked people if they're interested in selling a house now or in the near future. And of course, you get a few CMAs that way, and people want to know what their house is worth. Some are ready to sell, some weren't. And that too worked. I got some deals that way. Those are 2 pretty tried and tested methods. They're not easy, though. You make a lot of calls, you do a lot of walking. And then a lot of the business you get, I quickly found out, was for 6 months down the road. Happily, I was pretty sure I'd be in the business 6 months later, so I didn't throw any of those away. I kept them, and that's worked out well. I found out that farming was a great way of doing it. Now, my understanding of farming, being a farm kid, I thought, well, I don't want to farm. What the heck does that mean? But I found out over the years, and it took a while to really get a grasp of what farming was. Not so much a geographical area by door knocking or by phone calling. I found it, going to my local grocery store, gas station, restaurants I ate, getting to know the people there, get them to realize that I was in real estate, looking like I was in real estate, and being consistent that way, really in the end paid off for me as much as anything in farming.
So, do you remember your first client?
Yeah, I do. Kind of an interesting story about my first clients. Back in the day when you entered the real estate office, at least the ones I worked at, they had a big board in the meeting room, and they had everybody's name listed, and of course the amount of money you were supposed to make that month, which you had predicted you would make, and then they put down the name of the vendor, house you sold, and your name and the amount of commission. So first house I sold just happened to be, the vendors were named outhouses. So the first sale on the board was Roger sold the outhouse. It was interesting. I took a bit of ribbing for that. But Met the guy simply by, I was out playing ball certainly after I'd started. We were getting together to play some ball, get some things lined up. And one of the guys that casually mentioned to us in real estate says, "Oh, I got a friend thinking about buying, but I don't know. He's here. He was going to do buy last year." So I thought, what the heck? I didn't have a lot of clients, so I thought, better go meet this guy. So I met him. Nice guy. And heck, if I didn't sell him a house, it was very interesting for his sale. He insisted I ride with him. Of course, I've since learned in the real estate industry, it's really not a good idea to ride with clients. But I did. I jumped in his car, and in the back seat, he had a huge Doberman. And it just growled all the time. I could just hear it behind my right ear the entire time.
Wow.
Like, when you just got a good deal. Anyways,
Wow.
I got his house, and I didn't ride too many clients off that. Took my own car, no dogs.
After all this time in business, do you know how many clients you've had over the years, or do you have, how many clients do you have in your CRM or your database? Do you know?
Don't off the top, but my Christmas list that I actually send Christmas cards to and a calendar to runs at about the 250 mark. There'd be more because some of them have moved out of town. I still do keep in touch with those people. Some of them have moved back. Some of them still have an investment property here. So they're not exactly off my list, or they probably won't be buying anything in the near future. They may well sell their investment properties down the road. So if I included them, there'd be at least another 50 to 75 people I could add. And, if I'd done a better job right from the start of keeping track of all those people I dealt with, I would have did even better. I do think that's, one of the things that when you start, you don't realize just the length and longevity of the business and how important even a casual contact can become.
Yeah, so true. And it used to be an address book, probably a Rolodex, and things change over time too. So even moving that data, well, you might try a real estate CRM, client relationship management system. Then you might try something else, and then you might try something. And every time, you have realtors anyways complain they have challenges exporting and importing. So I think that would probably be a good thing right off the bat. Try to decide, where are you going to keep your people? What's your online address book going to be? Because you want a safe place you can put all your leads, all the people just in case that year comes down the road and then they go, "Oh yeah, remember Roger, he's a realtor."
Yeah, I find that is the key. It's like when the farming part is to be around and be consistently around people. My database, moving it from site to site, like you said, was a challenge over the years. The first one, especially going from cue cards to an actual database, because when I started, that was your database. It was a book full of cue cards that had some basic information on people. And because you wrote it out like that, a lot of times I didn't keep as much information as I didn't think it would be necessary. But over the years, it's more and more necessary. The more you know, right? The better off you are. I'm now selling to kids of the people I sold houses to years ago. So where I
Wow.
did keep that information, it was really handy to ask them. So how are your kids doing? Are they in university now? Because it brings you around to that conversation. Now, I would like to think we get there anyways, but the more often you can bring it around to that, I found that more often you have success at it.
Yeah, what a great point. I mean, you might not be thinking when you're starting your career that you're going to be working with the next generation, but things going well, and you are. I mean, it's a long term. Roger, do you find now after 40 years in business, more than that, do you find that your phone rings more and you're getting inbound calls, or are you still making lead generating phone calls as a routine?
I still make lead generating phone calls. I would say as a routine, that's probably fair. I do get a lot of my business now, though, probably close to 75, 80% of it comes as past business or connected to past business or, through that realm. I don't find as many new clients. I still do, though, as far as whether it's my favorite place to eat, that changes from time to time, getting to know the people. Once you get to know them, you know the management a bit. For example, one of the gas stations I first went to get some gas, and you wouldn't expect you're going to get a whole lot out of that. I eventually ended up selling the owner, the owner's brother, two other guys from his organization houses, all within about 5 or 6 years. There's 4 or 5 deals that came out of just my guy at the gas station that if I hadn't chatted with him, went in to see every day rather than pay at the pump when I came in. Still went in to chat with him. How are you doing? He'd ask what the market was like, and he might move someday. Yeah, I probably used that gas station for 4 years before anybody ever bought a house from me there. But eventually, over the next 5 or 6, I sold quite a few homes there, and then resold some of those homes since, and sold them a new one. And one guy had moved to Calgary. Well, that was unfortunate.
Well, that does happen, I'm sure, once in a while. Now, I will always remember meeting you, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. Happened on you on Instagram, probably from mutual connections or interests. And I saw this older realtor in a small town of Red Deer I had just gotten on Instagram. I probably had, I don't know, 100 connections on there, thought I was doing okay. And I saw you with, I don't know, it must have been over 1,000 at that time. And I thought, how did he do that? Did he just buy a whole bunch of people? How do you build that up in a small town? And when you're older and maybe not that up with technology, please. So tell us the story, because I came up to Red Deer. We sat down and had lunch. I was so interested to find out more about you. And you shared your mindset around technology and the social media.
It was interesting. I had probably avoided social media for a long time when other people already were on it. I was very busy, and I had people call me, "You get on this," or bring in things. I said, "Well, I'm already busy. I'm not really looking for a new source of leads at the time. The economy was doing great, and I was busy." Economy eventually slowed down. There was a few elections there. I ain't saying that affected it, but it may well have. Uh, and I found that things slowed down. I had some time. And I was talking to different people where they got their leads and what they were doing. And a lot of them would tell me we're on social media. And honestly, I hadn't even gone on to social media yet. My daughter told me that I shouldn't go on to Facebook because I'd be creeping her page. And I never really investigated anything. I thought, okay, I don't want to do that. So I never went on. But eventually thought, well, try some new things. So I got on, see what it was like. At first, I just copied and pasted, on Facebook. Thought, well, that's what you do. And then I got on to Instagram, and it was a little harder to know what I should do. I eventually came down to philosophy, though, that Facebook were my friends. They probably didn't want to see a lot of pasted things that they could find themselves on there, that they wanted to know a little more about what I did, and in a gentle way, maybe not a heavy commercial presence of every day, buy this, buy that, but some about the family, some about how I do my business. On Instagram, I quickly came to the same conclusion. I may not be going after as many just straight clients because I had a far wider reach. People tended to follow me, at least started to follow me from different places. So I wondered about that. So I decided that what was important was to keep the same kind of presence both places, but angle a little more towards realtors on Instagram because I reached a lot of realtors. Where Facebook, some of them did follow me, but it was more so on Instagram. So I had to think about what I was going to do this page about. I mean, again, you were right. I was older. Some of the people in the office were laughing at me, telling me I was a dinosaur because I'd never been on, and how easy and fun it was. And I think, oh my goodness, I looked at it and it didn't look that fun. But I decided what people asked about all the time was, what do you do? What do you do for a living? Like, how is it you make your money? Don't you just show up and get a big check? What else do you guys do? And there's so far more into it than that. I wished it was like that. But so I decided to post a little bit of something I did every day, whether it was put on a city hall to check out maybe the lot, or if it was to show a house, maybe pictures of the street, maybe a picture of the outside of the house, about the neighborhood, what they could expect to find, and what the market was doing. But kind of preferenced it all in like a story I'd be telling today. What I'm going to do is go to my office. I got a few CMAs to do. Going to go up to the southeast end to this certain subdivision, which is great because of why. It is good. It's lots of schools, lots of shopping, whatever it is. And then show a picture up there, maybe of the house, maybe of the street, maybe just some things they can do in the neighborhood, and try to be more informative on the neighborhoods and the lifestyle. That's why I tried to focus on the lifestyle that you would lead in these neighborhoods, because people buy their homes, yes, based on how many bedrooms they have and whether or not they have a garage. But almost equally important, and sometimes more important, is where the home is at, how close it is to the activities the kids will do, what are the schools like in that neighborhood, is there grocery shopping good there, is it across town, what's the bus service like. And while to some degree they're similar in all neighborhoods are also different. So if you can pick out those few differences and show it to them, I had people, even on Facebook, get back to me and say, I've lived here all my life. I didn't realize that was there. You assume people know all these things. As a realtor, you drive through a lot of subdivisions, so you end up knowing a lot of things that you might not otherwise know. So it's nice to share. And yeah, I've grown it to, I don't know, 6,000 or 7,000 now. And I've never bought a follower, because to me, the only advantage I have in this is that if a realtor was to call me to give me a referral, or someone would call for a general inquiry on a property, and anything I purchased wouldn't do any of that. As far as just
No.
being popular and having big numbers so I could sell some clothes or something on my site, just didn't appeal to me. Maybe I'll look at that when I'm retired or something.
I think you've done a great job on social media, and just the perfect example, just what you're saying. It's not that you're recreating and curating all of this content necessarily. In fact, Gary Vaynerchuk, who's really into, talking about social media and what to do, also says, don't create new stuff, just talk about what you're doing right now. So I know I saw recently, you saw a garage and it had actually some nice graffiti, nice painting on the garage doors. You shot a picture of it. Hey, I'm out and about, I'm in the community. And also I think I have noticed too, when you're updating, I have to take a mandatory course for FinTrack, or this legal thing or this certificate. And there's such a nice balance between, I'm experienced and I'm always keeping up on the rules and the contracts, and I'm out in your community and here's what's going on. And I think you sprinkle a few personal things in there every once in a while.
Yeah, I try to. I mean, I want to be human. I am human. So I like to make sure it
Yeah.
looks that way. Other people sometimes do other ways and have a lot of houses they might put on. I don't want to bore people. I want them to be interested in what might be available, but not so much a particular house, but more about the subdivisions and again, the lifestyle you'd live. Because generally speaking, at least in Red Deer, our market's different than others. But you can find almost any kind of style house in any subdivision. They really mixed Red Deer up that way. Like you can have duplexes to $1 million houses will be in the same subdivision, not the same clothes, obviously, or the same end of the subdivision necessarily. But if that area appeals to you, we can probably find you a home in that area that's going to meet your lifestyle needs. And as we all know, picking up your kids and getting groceries, that all adds a lot to your day. So if it's convenient, in my case, we picked a spot where my kids, at least once they got to junior high, could walk at a reasonable thing without crossing major arteries. I don't know. I found that makes life nicer, easier, and more fun. And my clients seem to tell me the same thing, that lifestyle is very important to them. So we try to mix that in there and try not to be too stuffy, because I'm not good at stuffy anyways. If you can't laugh and have a good time, you're probably not living right.
Well, I think you're doing social media just great. You're just honest, authentic. You're just putting out there what you're doing, and it's obviously working at 6,000 to 7,000 followers. You're still beating me on the social media game.
Just lucky.
Now, you briefly mentioned retirement. I wonder if now, sure enough, if you're listening in, you might be a real estate student or you might be a new licensee. You might not be really thinking about retiring, but it's going to come up. I wonder, Roger, if you have any advice or any experience, how can a person prepare for retirement, or how have you liked what you've done?
Well, there's lots of things you can do for retirement. Well, I'm getting close to that myself in lots of ways. I'm thinking about when that may or may not happen. I always thought I'd retire as soon as I could find something else I wanted to do, so I wouldn't be totally bored. But so far, not really found much I wanted to do except for this. So here I am still. A lot of my clients have bought revenue properties. They bought them in their 50s. That way they're relatively paid for by the time they got to 65 years old, and live off the revenue of those properties. 1 to 3 or 4 if you're going to manage them yourself. Other people have bought more and got someone to manage them for them. All good things to do. And I also myself bought some revenue properties along the way. I got out of all mine a few years back when changed governments and things, and it just seemed like that we were maybe at a high. And once in a while you get lucky. I was right. So I got out of that. I'm not opposed again to buying back into the market again. I think a revenue property is a nice way to make some additional income to your retirement. I also threw a bunch of money in the stock market. That seems like a pretty simple thing, but we can all see the stock market's no guarantee either, right? And I didn't go into heavy risky stocks. I stayed the simpler stocks, not knowing that market as well as I do the real estate market. Don't want to get ahead of what I know. So I kept it pretty basic, got some advice. I think that the key thing in real estate to plan way ahead. You have lots of choices. Revenue properties are a good choice. Investment properties, one maybe that in a few years you can turn over. That's great. Supplementing that and diversifying with stocks and things. And a lot of times I bought what I knew. In this case, it was oil industry because that's what I knew. Or I, stuck to those type of things. And I really think that's important. But again, it's like anything starting this business, it's planning ahead. If you don't have a plan, you're probably not going to get there. So a guy one time told me, if you don't have a map with a spot to go to, how do you know you're even going the right direction? That was a good point. So I've always tried to keep it that way. Keep in mind where I was going. Obviously, the far ahead date is different than what's in front of you right at the moment. But if it's in the back of your mind where you're going, you tend to get there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good advice, Roger. I hope you're listening into that and keeping it in mind for your own retirement. And I wonder, if you look back over your career, with from your own hindsight, your own school of hard knocks, as they say, what advice would you give a new agent starting out? How can they become successful? What would you have to say to someone starting in the industry?
Well, there's a lot of things you can do to be successful in this industry. Not everybody's done what I've done. I've seen guys come in and do things totally different than me and be very, very successful. But the thing that they have in common is consistency. Make a plan. Again, you can't get anywhere without a plan. I don't necessarily mean you have to have a dollar figure you're going to make in a particular year, but you have to have a plan on how you're going to approach it, where you think you're going to get your prospects from, what areas you're going to work. I think the biggest thing I learned that I knew but didn't understand when I started was the importance of farming, the importance of keeping leads, even for the future, writing down all the stuff about them. It took me 2 or 3 years before I really got into that. The first company I worked for, which I worked for 5 years, nice thing about that company is they do all that for you. They send out your Christmas cards, they'd send out this card, that card. But when I left, I was informed that those weren't really my clients, they were their clients. And because I didn't keep a real good personal data, I probably lost about half my previous stuff that I couldn't remember. I didn't remember who it was, where it was. But I got most of it back, and that was great. But I would keep it that from day one and realize how important that is. And your sphere of influence is a lot more than you think it is. Like I said, it's your gas stations, it's your grocery stores. A smile on your face is the best way to break ice with most people. They are usually interested in what you do. And if you tell them, I used to take my real estate books to parties when I went, because I put it up on their shelf, but everybody'd ask about houses. It wouldn't take long, and I'd get it out. Key thing, though, give no advice while you're at parties. Have them come see you the next day.
Yeah.
But that's what I would do. Really work those things. Know your relationships. Know your neighbors. They, in the end, are the source of your livelihood.
Yeah, that's really interesting what happened to you to begin with. And possibly can happen when a new agent joins a team as well. If somebody is managing your clients for you, and then you choose to leave that brokerage, or maybe you choose to move along from a certain team that you're with, you might not, just be able to take all those clients who worked with you if someone else feels they belong to them. So that's something good to think about in joining up with whoever you're joining up with.
Yeah, again, you won't necessarily make every client your best friend, but they can all be your friends. And you know what? I've had a lot of business sent to me by clients of their cousins, their aunts and their uncles, their kids. You just got to remember in this business that not all your relatives who you think would do that for you will. And that's my one piece of advice to be careful about. Don't let this business destroy your relationships. I mean, I had people who I knew who didn't buy with me when I first started in real estate. And I guess probably because they thought I didn't have experience, or they looked at me as the guy I used to be before that. And I worked drilling rigs, so they didn't necessarily think I'd be a good realtor. So I could have took offense and it would have destroyed some relationships. But I tried to take a longer view, and it wasn't always easy. But in the end, it really was the right thing. Most of them in the end did buy from me or do business with me. And even the ones that maybe didn't because they were loyal to a realtor they already had, I learned to admire that about them, because loyalty to your realtor, it doesn't have to be to me, is a beautiful thing. And I would tell them that after a while. I learned to tell them that, if you're really loyal to that guy, you should stick with him because, he's done something to earn your loyalty. And I appreciate when my clients stay with me from what I've done. So you got to take that as a grain of salt, and you'll have a happier life, because you can't get them all, but you should always try.
Yeah, I remember somebody mentioning to us they didn't want to go in particular with a family member because they were afraid if something went wrong with what they were trying to do, it would cause bad feelings and ruin the relationship. So both ways.
Yeah, and sometimes friends worry that you're going to know their banking information or too much information that they don't necessarily want you to know, because they think, you view them a certain way. They don't want to change that. So a gentler, longer term approach to that kind of thing works better. If you just get upset because it didn't go that way, it not only costs you that business, which you already didn't have, but it costs you future business. Because in the end of the day, if you're friends, over time, they will see you that way as a realtor. They will get to know whether or not you're competent, and they'll see it. And then they will eventually come around to you without anybody being upset. But like I said, first few I had, I have to admit, there was a couple of cousins I was a little bit miffed at, but I'm glad I got past that. And I would just recommend that you give it lots of thought. Don't go down that road at all, because, people have reasons for what they do. Sometimes it's just loyalty to another person, which is nothing wrong with that.
Fair enough. Yeah. Well, this has been some great advice, and thank you for being so honest with your stories and with your experiences. I know everyone will just take a little grain of salt away and hopefully, avoid some of the mistakes that they might have made and become more successful. Do you have any final words or last stories before we wrap up, Roger?
Well, not too much. I'd say smile lots. It's a whole lot better to laugh through life than it is to cry. And people like positive people. No one likes working with people who aren't positive and aren't happy, are gloomy. So be happy. And there's lots of reasons every day to find optimism, as there is to find reasons not to be optimistic. Even in this economy we have today, it will eventually sort itself out, I do believe. In Alberta, I do think we're sitting pretty good. So be confident, be happy. I do things will come along fine for the Alberta economy.
That's great advice for all of us, really, no matter what industry you're in. Roger, where can people find you if someone wants to connect? What's your handle on Instagram? Do you have a website?
Yeah, my website's rwill@maxwellrealty.ca. You find me on Instagram at RogerWill6813, I think, or Roger Will. You can text that in, it will come up. Same thing on Facebook. Instagram, have a look. Any suggestions or any thing you think I could do better, or things I could add that I don't show you, I'd be happy to hear it. I've got some of my best ideas from people saying, hey, I'd like to know more about this, or I'd like to see that part of the subdivision more. Hey, doesn't happen every day, but when it does, I take their advice, make sure I show people having fun. Because again, life's not no good if you're not having any fun.
That's great advice. So connect with Roger. If you have any questions, let him know. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy day today. And we will see all of you. We'll hope you'll listen to us, all of the students and realtors who are listening in next time on the Hello Relo podcast. Bye for now. Thank you, Roger.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Well, that's it for today's episode. Now, don't forget to check out our website for some helpful information. The address could not be simpler. It is relo.ca. That's RELO.ca. And also, don't forget to check us out on your favorite podcast site either. Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Google, plus the many others that are out there. Just simply click on our RSS feed, and then every time we drop a new podcast, it gets delivered right to your device. It couldn't be any easier than that. Well, that's it for today. Thanks for listening to Hello Relo, and have a great day.